Perhaps you have wondered, why are Koreans such romantics? This is the question I would like to consider with you today. Korean dramas have come to feature an increasingly diverse range of genres: workplace comedies, fantasy period pieces, detective stories, and more. But Korean dramas have traditionally been romances, and even now the great majority of Korean dramas, regardless of genre, are characterized by a sense of romance. The first Korean drama that I watched was the 2002 classic Winter Sonata, which I watched with my parents. My parents, who were also not K-drama watchers, were drawn to this one as it was set in their hometown of Chuncheon, and we found a number of personal connections with the story. My parents had fond memories of the various shooting locations, many of which have now become tourist attractions, and which we have also had occasion to visit on family trips to Korea. My dad had been a professor at the same local university where one protagonist's father also teaches. And the story's theme of fatherlessness, with one protagonist having lost her father at a young age, and another not knowing the identity of his father and searching for him, was deeply moving for my dad, who lost his own father in the Korean War. Over the years, the drama has become a family favorite, and one that we often reference in conversation together. Winter Sonata is a story about the lasting impact of first love. A word that the characters often repeat is 처음, meaning first or first time, a word emphasizing the purity and awkwardness of young love. 처음 is also the title of a song, a poignant melody and motif that links the lovers through various stages of their lives.
와, 너 피아노 정말 잘 친다. 근데 이 곡이 지금 뭐야?
처음.
The innocence of first love is contrasted, however, with the harsher realities of life: tragic circumstances, family obligations, and other pressures that often keep the lovers apart. The drama depicts both the lightness and the weightiness of young love, with the characters often portraying tearful scenes. Winter Sonata not only originated many of the tropes that have now become cliches of K-drama, but it is also the series that truly made Korean dramas global. K-dramas had already achieved success in China in the 1990s, but Winter Sonata truly sparked what has now become known as the Korean wave, drawing viewers of K-drama throughout Asia and the world. Winter Sonata was especially well received in Japan. The drama's lead actor, Bae Yong-jun, lovingly called Yonsama by the Japanese fans, would often be mobbed on promotional tours by thousands of middle-aged women who had been moved by the drama's inspiring a nostalgia for the purity of first love. I think it is meaningful that the romance of Winter Sonata found such resonance in Japan. It was via Japan in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a period of great influence and also colonial occupation by Japan, that Korea received the European tradition of Romanticism, an intellectual, artistic, and literary movement that, in contrast with the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, valorized emotion, imagination, and a nostalgia for the past. The English poet William Wordsworth's famous definition of poetry as a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings helps to characterize Romanticism's view of poetry and art as born out of deep feeling. To consider one instance of Japan's transmission of Romanticism to Korea, we might look back at the March 1st movement, which took place on March 1st, 1919, and was a nationwide protest in which 2 million Koreans, around 10% of the then national population, gathered to declare Korea's independence from Japanese colonial rule. Organized by Korean Christians who had grown in influence with the support of American missionaries, and in partnership with Korean Buddhists and the followers of Chondogyo, a native Korean religion of Eastern values, the March 1st movement was a non-violent protest. But the colonial government, which was taken by surprise, responded with great force, arresting and killing thousands of Koreans. One voice that openly denounced the colonial government's violence was that of Japanese art critic and social advocate Yanagi Soetsu. Following the March 1st movement, Yanagi wrote a series of essays in defense of Korea. In one essay on Korean art, he predicts that it will be through art and through beauty that Korea will ultimately achieve its independence, writing, "The sword is weak, but beauty is strong." He alludes to a line from English Romantic poet Percy Shelley's poem To a Skylark, and describes what he calls the extreme beauty of Korea's sorrow. If Shelley's famous maxim is true, then Korean beauty is the most extreme form of beauty. Did Shelley not say that our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought? Yanagi also refers to the New Testament, writing, "Did Jesus not say that the sorrowful would be comforted? Surely Korean sorrow is the sorrow that is embraced by the heart of God." He recalls here Jesus' well-known blessings, or beatitudes, from the Sermon on the Mount. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." While some later critics have censured Yanagi's efforts for consolation as a kind of exoticizing of colonial suffering, his writings were largely well received as sympathetic both in Japan and in colonial Korea. The image of Jesus as one who weeps and mourns with those who mourn is an important and enduring one in Korea. In the novel Greek Lessons by the writer Han Gang, who received the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature, the first Asian woman and the first Korean to receive the prize, when one character is posed the question of how God could be both good and all-powerful and still allow suffering in the world, she responds, "In that case, my God is both good and full of sorrow." Just as the Beatitudes open up a spiritual realm of divine hope and comfort that is accessed through a present suffering, Romantic ideas also highlight an artistic realm through which sorrow can lead to beauty and to freedom. In the devastating failure of the March 1st movement, many Koreans poured their sorrow into art, literature, and poetry to express their sense of loss, of a lost country, and of a lost innocence. Sorrow, emotion, and feeling became forms of resistance, and romance and a seeking for beauty, expressions of a desperate hope. The tradition of Romanticism and of romance still remains today in Korea. Poetry still evokes a spirit of resistance and is highly visible in daily life, in bookshops and in inscriptions on public monuments and in public spaces like subway stations. The K-beauty brand Innisfree is named for the peaceful island where the Irish poet William Butler Yeats spent his childhood summers, and which he memorializes in his poetry. And the Korean conglomerate corporation Lotte, pronounced Lotte in Korean, commemorates Charlotte or Charlotte of German writer Goethe's famous novel of unrequited love, The Sorrows of Young Werther. And I would suggest that the romance of so many K-dramas, and especially the theme of a nostalgia for a first love, are also legacies of the tradition of Romanticism in Korea. It is fitting then that Winter Sonata's heroine, Yujin, turns to poetry to process her feelings.
티즈데일. 그리운 눈빛으로 돌아보고 뒤따르는 저를 확인하세요. 당신의 사랑으로 절 일으켜주세요. 미풍이 제비를 치켜 올리듯 해가 쬐든 비바람이 치든 우리가 멀리 날아갈 수 있도록 해주세요. 하지만 제 첫사랑이 다시 저를 부르면 어떡하죠?
She hears a reciting of American poet Sarah Teasdale's poem, The Flight, and later dwells on the poem's refrain. But what if I heard my first love calling me once more? When I visited my parents' hometown a few years ago, one of my father's hometown friends told us about a new high-speed double-decker train connecting Chuncheon to Seoul. The line had been proudly and lovingly named Cheongchun, an amalgamation of the names of the departure and destination stations. Cheongchun might be translated as the innocence of youth, or perhaps the sweet prime of youth. As I heard it, I remember thinking to myself, how like the Koreans to take a high-speed train, a marvel of modern technology and industrialization, and use it to express a romantic nostalgia for an idyllic youth.